The premise is sparking real conversations on LinkedIn. I'm noticing a real pushback to the polished AI side of things.
You just get snowblind. Like where LinkedIn used to be this really kind of relatively trusted platform, I think its reputation is in the process of being tarnished by just how much spam content, slop content is out there.
Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. Really good to be here.
So what would you say is your claim to fame?
My claim to fame at the moment, and there's maybe some recency bias to this, maybe it's more infamy than fame, but I recently kind of took a decision to leave Gen AI and LLMs out of my creative work, out of my life, full stop. And I kind of coined this term around becoming an AI vegan. And I found myself actually kind of at the bottom of this internet pylon with the actual vegan community. So there was a vegan influencer called Earthling Ed who ended up kind of seeing my AI vegan comments and basically writing a bit of a hit piece on me and how stupid this idea of AI vegan was. So I did actually find myself semi-internet famous or infamous for a little while there recently. So I'd say that's my most current claim to fame.
And that's how we connected, right? That's somebody saw what you'd written and then they saw a post I had written recently and about how I was done using LLMs for my writing. And they're like, you should meet Joe. And that's how we met. And we had a so dear listener, dear viewer, we had a very nerdy, deep, and wide-ranging conversation about AI and the future of the world. And we solved all the world's problems in that conversation. But no, you're here because we're also talking about content marketing. And it is related to what you do as a content marketer. Do you want to talk about a little bit of what you do with your agency?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the founder at Great Chat. We are a LinkedIn content agency, proudly AI free, I should mention. And so we really help founders, entrepreneurs to spark real conversations on LinkedIn. That's the focus of everything we do. I've been doing that for about 3 years now, coming up to 3 years. And so as you can imagine, like a lot has evolved in the content marketing game, especially on LinkedIn in that time. Lots has happened, lots has changed, but I also think a lot is still the same as it always has been in kind of the content marketing era. So happy to chat about all that kind of stuff today.
I want to start with the angle of like when you say you're AI vegan or AI sober, how does that affect you as a content marketing agency? How do you keep up?
The way that this affects us and keeping up is an interesting one. I think what we've always been about is focusing on results rather than activity. So I think it's really easy to fall into this activity trap of like, let's produce more stuff. You know, we can now post 10 posts a week on LinkedIn and write 2 blogs a week. Like the activity capacity essentially goes to infinite if you use LLMs. But I really think that we often conflate that with results, with engagement, and with ultimately, for me, you know, clients we work with are B2B service providers. So these are high ticket transactions, sales. And so there's going to have to be a one-to-one conversation somewhere through that sales process. And that's really what we focus on. Is the point of your content, of any content marketing, I think, is to spark that conversation one-to-one with a potential buyer. Like I think that's ultimately where we're trying to get to. We have to get really laser focused on that outcome, given that we do have, you know, finite resources. Like I engage freelancers to write every single post that we write by hand. All the research we do is manual, so to speak. So that means we have to get laser focused on the outcome we're trying to achieve.
Give me an example of the outcome. What are you seeing?
The outcome for me really is for that ideal buyer to ideally send you a DM and ask about what you do. But I think in the real sense, with the amount of lurkers that we see on LinkedIn, that kind of trigger is a profile view, like someone that is in your ideal client profile that you'd love to work with. If they can view your profile, you then have an opening to spark a conversation one-to-one. That's kind of we're looking for those intent signals, you know, profile views, liking content, commenting ideally, or, you know, occasionally a DM that slides in. But really getting to the point where you're at a one-to-one interaction with someone who might buy from you. That for me is the outcome that we're chasing.
You're talking about activities and AI and volume. Have you gotten any pushback from clients? What was their reaction to your move?
So this is really interesting. If I kind of go back to December 2024, I was all in on LLMs. So I'd taken the hundreds of thousands of published content, of words of published content, the hours and hours of transcripts with clients. I took all this material that I had over the previous 2 years in my agency, and I used that to train this army of custom GPT, so AI agents that were trained on the customer's tone of voice, their audience, like their content strategy, all that stuff. So late last year, I was basically churning this content machine for every client. And I realized that we'd kind of lost sight of, in pursuit of this activity, like we'd lost sight of the objective, making this think, feel, and do something. So we got more efficient than ever, but arguably less, well, definitely less effective. Like I noticed kind of key numbers going down. And so I realized that we had to kind of tweak something. I also had in the back of my mind, it is only a matter of time until clients start asking about how AI fits into the process. And it's a tough conversation to have, to say, well, look, we've got this custom GPT that's trained on your voice. I know you're paying us a good retainer every month to handle this for you, but we're essentially using this like $20 tool for you. Like that conversation becomes, well, just give me the keys to the AI agent and let me handle this myself. So I also just saw the runway kind of disappearing beneath us, as if AI agents become kind of core to the process, then it's kind of, how do you continue to defend that kind of moat or that like premium price point that I've always tried to be about? So kind of circumvented or short-circuited that whole process by removing AI from the loop. And I think of us now really as artisans rather than a content factory.
You think there's going to be a market for that in the future?
I truly believe there will. I think the slight friction that I have at the moment is like we produce content for a social media platform, which, is inherently kind of disposable. There's that balance there, right, to strike. I think the other thing that's happening in amongst all this is the pendulum will swing back. Like we are now at that like infestation mode, like slop waters are just rising and rising as everyone tries their hand at this. And I think we're all collectively going like, more of this really. And so I think that the pendulum swings back towards human-led content. But what I'm seeing along the way is a bit of an exodus as well, like a bit of you just get snowblind. Like where LinkedIn used to be this really kind of relatively trusted platform compared to the other socials, I think its reputation is in the process of being tarnished by just how much spam content, slop content is out there. So I'm hoping that the pendulum kind of swings back towards human content before everyone has just gone completely snowblind and given up on LinkedIn, if that makes sense. So yeah, I believe we'll get there. I really hope that we'll get there. I think it's partly a combination of like looking at more durable channels. So not just social media, but more towards potentially email marketing. Obviously, a lot of people are jumping into Substack now as well. But I think I have faith that this pendulum is swinging back. What are you seeing?
It's a good question. We have not been disrupted by AI because of video being in and of itself quite an advanced moat to bridge for AI. And we've seen the Sora videos, they're getting good. But it's a matter of time before the Synthesias of the world take over. If anyone's familiar, Synthesia is one of the many AI avatar platforms. And the problem with, and this is a great philosophical discussion, is like, I don't know where the world will end up, but I do believe there will be a split. There is a split, and I believe it will become more obvious, let's put it that way, between the people who don't have any problem replacing themselves in a video avatar doing thought leadership and those who don't. I think the minority will be okay, and then they'll realize very quickly it's not the way to go, because the nature of video content is not to save time, it's to build trust quickly. And if you are replacing yourself with an AI avatar and somebody watches a few minutes of it and then they meet with you in a sales call, what's their impression going to be if they find out everything they watched was not you? Going to feel cheap, isn't it? It's going to feel, you're going to feel like, why did I spend my time doing that? Even if you were helped, there's just going to be this sense of deception of, you didn't spend the time doing this. Why should I spend the time listening to you? Are you even like what your video is? So there's this inherent trust gap of just using video. Like the whole point of, again, video is to build trust. Why replace yourself? The whole point is to build that connection with you as a human at scale. So to answer your question, we haven't seen it disrupt anything we're doing. And I believe some field folks will use it to replace themselves, but I think it'll be a very niche circumstances. I doubt very many, I doubt any true thought leaders are going to use it to replace themselves, because you've got to meet with them anyways to talk about the subject material. You might as well capture it on video. That's our model.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I see this, we're obviously seeing AI photos, like professional photos, flood in, and even that, I just really don't. I mean, you can always tell, and I get the idea of like going to get your headshot done in professional lighting in a good studio and like looking your best as an actual person, but the idea of just completely synthesizing yourself has never made sense to me, just for the exact same reasons you're talking about there. I don't think it gets you closer to where you're trying to get to in terms of a relationship.
yeah, there's certain time savings I think we're enjoying as a society with AI, but we're not realizing there's this price tag attached to all these decisions we're making. It's not like in the store you pick up an item and the price tag is right there. This is, we're picking up the item, walking out of the store, not realizing 3 days later there's a long cord attached to a price tag that came home with us. And it's not the price tag we saw in the item. It's a price tag we're not even aware of what it's going to cost us. For me, I gave up AI in my writing specifically because I noticed it was affecting my thinking. Because there's this saying, right? Writing is thinking, which I believe wholeheartedly is true. And it wasn't that the output was bad. It was that it was affecting the way I was thinking. And my thinking as a founder is my most precious asset. It's the reason people work with me. It's the reason people have me on their podcast. It's why I do this podcast. It's what, wins me business when I'm talking with clients and sales calls and thinking and I'm giving insight. One of the 3 hallmarks of thought leadership is like teaching your people about the underlying root causes of their issues. It's not just surface level stuff. It's not this, it's that type of teaching. And so that's thinking. So I didn't like the way I was being affected by it. So I gave it up. Not quite as vegan as you though. I still use it for research and things like that. But I double check the heck out of all the research I get because boy, does ChatGPT love to hallucinate a good research project.
Yeah, we had a really interesting story that came out in Australia, which was one of the big 4 consulting firms in Australia. I think it was Ernst & Young, which is global brand. They had submitted this like close to $500,000 report for federal government, and there were just fabricated quotes in there from industry experts that these people had never said these things. Like these were made up people saying made up things in the middle of an expensive government report, and you can kind of see just those conversations taking place in these kind of firms where there's obviously this chase to like cut out this junior layer of people, like the quality assurance, the proofreading, the fact checking. It's just like it's eroding, and it's kind of scary.
Thank you for humoring me on that. I want to get back to the premise is sparking real conversations on LinkedIn. Obviously, there's the proof of human side of LinkedIn, which is I'm noticing. I mean, it's like unhinged posts. What's that called? You just say whatever's on your mind. Stream of consciousness type wording I'm seeing from a lot of folks in marketing. I think that's a very real pushback to the polished AI side of things. But what do you mean by sparking real conversations? And tell me about that a little bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I think what you've described there is something that I kind of called this out 12 months ago now, this idea of normcore content. I'm a Crocs and socks guy. It's like I'm a dad. I've got 3 young kids. And so normcore content for me is like Crocs and socks is ugly, right? But it's real. It's genuine. And I'm seeing more of this stream of consciousness style, like this normcore content on LinkedIn where it's like, I'm not going to get dressed up to the nines to drop the kids at daycare or at school. Like I'm just sharing myself more genuinely with less regard to polish. And I think you're right. This is like a reaction, just like normcore was a reaction. Normcore fashion was a reaction against kind of specific fashion trends in the early 2000s. Like this normcore content I'm seeing is a strong reaction against the super polished, trite AI content that's out there. So it is more human. It's less grammatically correct at times. It's got less punctuation in it. It's typically deeper. And the way I kind of see it playing out is, and I frame it up as just going deeper on the human side versus trying to optimize for formatting, for length, for like sentence spacing, like all that kind of stuff that we saw a few years ago on LinkedIn. I see that like a correction against that trend now.
What do you do with clients? Are clients subscribe to this idea? You and I are. I'll share my day-to-day. How do you encourage that with clients?
There is a mix. And it depends on the client's role in a company. It depends on the nature of the company and their audience as well. So, for example, we write for the CEO of a $500 million brand. Now that's a very different kind of positioning than another client of ours who is a leadership development facilitator, like essentially goes into organizations and trains them on developing their leaders. That's a much more personality-led, solopreneur style business model than a figurehead CEO of a large organization. So it's very much dependent on the client and kind of the strategy that we map out together. I think overall clients are keen to show more of themselves, and that's typically why they're engaging someone like us. I think we're seeing clients that have tried the ChatGPT route They've tried the DIY kind of AI-driven route and it just hasn't led to results. And so they're sort of wondering what's missing. I think particularly for startup founders or scale-up founders or even solopreneurs, where the founder brand is really strongly tied to the success of the company, that's where I see a competitive advantage around more personal, like individual-led content, like more about your day-to-day, more about what you do on the weekends, like your kind of life outside of work. I think that becomes a differentiator. Amongst all the SaaS products or amongst all the leadership coaches that are out there, it's kind of you and your habits, your quirks that people want to buy into.
Showing a bit of human behind the brand. Yeah, that's the whole point of, founder-led content is building that affinity quickly, building that connection quickly. What better way to show a few flaws, a few little details. I want to talk about workshop tour content. This is something you mentioned. Can I unpack what that is and what that, you're talking about how that's an effective way to show, not tell, which is what AI can't do. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, yeah. So let me structure this a little bit. So when I think about a LinkedIn content strategy, it's social media. So I think there is an element of needing to play the game, so to speak, in terms of the algorithm and how to make sure your content actually gets seen by people. So I think about a 3-part LinkedIn content strategy. The first part is around awareness driving content. So this is going to be more broad-based type content. This is going to be more general stuff, not necessarily specifically going deep on your subject matter expertise, but creating content with a view of reaching a wide range of people. Like we need to play that game a little bit at a time. I reckon about 30% of the time. I think then about 60% of your content strategy really needs to focus on trust building. That's where workshop tour content comes in. That's how we kind of really go deep on our expertise and show people that we know what we're talking about. And I think now as we've moved into this kind of infinite slop era where anything you read is potentially synthetic, like made up business parables, fabricated, case studies, stories, all that kind of thing. It's much more important to actually show. And this is where I think of giving people a tour of the workshop. So to give you an example, we took a sales conversation that one of our founder clients had. Now, this conversation hadn't led to a sale. The prospect had asked a few questions, the founder had answered them, but it was clear, like reviewing the transcript, there was some questions that just hadn't been unsaid. Like you could kind of feel that the prospect wasn't all the way in. So we took that real world moment, like that real conversation, and we teased out, well, what is that stuff lurking below the surface that the prospect didn't ask? Like how would we frame, if the founder could have that conversation again, how would we frame it differently to kind of get to that outcome? And we created a series of content around that. You might think of this as like objection handling, potentially. We just created content based on a real world conversation that had happened. We put it out. It actually reactivated an old lead that was kind of hovering around, that was in the consideration phase. But these unanswered questions were clearly like barriers at some point along the sales process. And we now, in proactively like creating content around them, like pre-handling them, had removed those barriers and it worked. Like the client ended up reactivating an old lead and we got a project out of it because it was all grounded in a real conversation. Like for me, that's what a tour of the workshop does. It takes you inside the 4 walls of a product or a business or a thought leadership practice rather than like trying to make something up.
I love that because I've been on many tours, having lived in France myself. I know you live in France today. France has a lot of tours, a lot of places you can go and visit, and there's a tour guide, and those tour guides love their jobs. I would love my job if I got to teach people all day about the obscure history of this castle or whatever that we're touring. And one of the interesting things I noticed about tour guides, to take your analogy is they ask questions and then answer questions nobody's asking, but everybody, once you ask it, they go, oh yeah, that is true. Why didn't I think of asking that question? And what's interesting to me is you did that with this sales call. You inferred what was not said. AIs, going back to what we're talking about, can be a very mixed bag. I've used AIs to go over my transcripts. What am I missing? And it tells me what it thinks I'm missing, and I go, nope, that's clearly not it. AI does not have an inference ability. It has a word guessing ability, which could be equated to some kind of inferencing, but it is not human intuition. It is not human inferencing, reading between the lines. And that's what it sounds like you guys did, which is fascinating to me.
That's it. And I think as well that, that takes experience, it takes expertise, it takes having had a number of these calls to kind of know how conversations are going, to know what prospects kind of might be looking for and what's there and what is kind of lurking below the surface.
Well, with that, Joe, where can we learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, my kind of key place I'm hanging out at the moment is on Beehive. So I send a weekly email to my people. So joemckay.info is the best place to find that. That's JOEMCKAY.info. I ship a completely handwritten, human-written newsletter. It's just a prompt kind of to think differently. And no, it's not that kind of prompt. So you can also find me on LinkedIn, of course. That's where I spend a lot of my time.
Beautiful. Well, Joe, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Justin. Good to chat.